Hey everyone, welcome to a comparison video between the R9 and all of its relevant competitors. We've got this motorcycle as a sweepstakes bike ending on October 3rd, and I figured I'd sit down and talk you through all of the relevant competitors for this motorcycle and how it stacks up. I've ridden all of the competitors to this motorcycle, both on-road and track, except for one that I will point out in today's video. Now, of course, this motorcycle's main competitor is the Panigale V2. We did an entire dedicated video on that, so I'm gonna save that comparison for the end of the video. Why don't we talk about the big green elephant in the room, perhaps the #1 competitor to the Yamaha R9, the Kawasaki ZX-6. Right, so the ZX-6 is a really cool bike. It's really one of the last bikes holding on to that torch of the inline-4 traditional Japanese sport bike thing, and it's a pretty sweet bike. With the bump up in cubes over traditional 600, it makes a little bit extra torque, which makes it really fun to ride. It's got the right features, it's got the right tech. Kawasaki's done a good job of updating it throughout the years, and in my opinion, it still stands to the test of time. The pricing for these is a little confusing, but I'll walk you through it. It's $11,399 for a base model with no ABS. You can get $12,399 for a model with ABS. So for those of you out there looking to track your ZX-6 very seriously, I'd recommend getting the non-ABS module. That's gonna save you a ton of time and effort as you track prep the motorcycle. If you wanna drop a little bit of extra coin, you can get the 40th anniversary with ABS for $12,649. So very price competitive to the R9. The 636cc inline-4 makes 127 horsepower at 13,000 RPMs with the Ram air intake system. You can see the front of the bike has that little Ram air scoop, allowing for more air to go in as you go faster. Now, some 600 squids seem to think that it just exponentially increases the power the faster you go. That's not really how it works. It just adds a little bit extra juice if you go a little bit faster. Big difference here is 52 foot-pounds of torque compared to the torque on this engine. It is way down and way further up in the rev range. The R9 is probably meaningfully faster in the real world over the ZX-6, but makes its power in a completely different way. I'm a bit torn as to which one I would pick, to be honest. I've ridden this bike pretty extensively on road and track. I have a lot of experience with the ZX-6 as well. We had one as a giveaway bike, and it really depends on what flavor you're looking for. If you want the inline-4 experience, go and get that. If you want to try something new with a little bit more torque, try out the R9. In terms of weight, both motorcycles weigh right around 430 pounds, and yeah, for my sort of seat of the pants feeling, they're about as heavy as each other. Tech is really where you start to see a big difference. The 636 is a platform that, although it's kept up over time, it's a little bit long in the tooth. It doesn't have the Brembo styling calipers that this motorcycle does, so the braking feel isn't quite as strong and quite as precise. It doesn't have a 6-axis IMU, giving you much more advanced features like slide control, traction control, wheelie control across different dimensions. It's a much more simple, rudimentary, ignition-based system for traction control. All it's gonna do is just cut the timing a little bit and make sure that the rear wheel doesn't spin too much. That's all it's doing. So it's not super intelligent. You can kind of think of the 636 as maybe the remedial kid at your school, but still plenty fast on the track, if you know what I'm saying. That kid can sprint the 100-meter dash pretty good. It's an interesting bike, it's green, it's make the right sounds. I really like the 636, and it's kind of a toss-up between that bike and the R9 in my opinion. Okay, let's talk about another one. If 636 cc's of inline-4 is not quite enough for you, well, there's actually a dinosaur motorcycle still for sale that is completely analog and bare bones, and that's the Suzuki GSX-R750. This is a bike that sort of failed upwards over the last 10, 15 years. Suzuki kind of kept making this motorcycle as a bit of an homage to its old 750 class bikes. Even as every other manufacturer stopped making a 750 class bike, Suzuki just kept doing it. And it went so long and in such kind of uninterrupted production that it's now found itself relevant once again. We're all kind of waiting with bated breath to see if Suzuki updates this model at all, but as it sits, this thing is basically as it sold from 2011. So if you pride yourself on a very analog, pure, old school motorcycle feeling, the GSX-R750 really is one of the last kind of apex predator sport bikes you can buy that still feels like something from 2008. I mean, it virtually is the same sort of motorcycle. So we're talking old school dash, cable throttle, no ABS, no traction control, nothing really other than a 749cc inline-4, making People kind of claim a lot of different numbers online, but it's right around 120-ish horsepower. This bike does not make 140 horsepower. If anyone out there is saying that it makes 140, it does not make 140. This thing makes around 120-ish horsepower. But much like the 636, because it's a big engine, 749cc, it's got a good amount of torque. And without any of the added bloater features, it weighs 419 pounds ready to ride. Because this bike is also from a bygone era, the ergonomics package is proper super sport stuff. I mean, this is a real deal sport bike. We're not talking something a little bit more comfortable and naked bike derived like the R9 or like the Panigale V2 that kind of is like a fully fared naked bike. This is from a different time and a different place. This is a hardcore super sport machine. So if you want that experience, that's the one to get. Weirdly enough though, this bike is $500 more than the R9, and that's where I start to scratch my head a little bit. You know, in terms of features, technology, safety, modern amenities, I mean, the R9 for $500 less than the Gixxer kind of makes the case for itself and kind of sells itself, if you know what I'm saying. But the Gixxer 750, again, it's the purest sport bike. It's a really cool time capsule machine, and for the right kind of guy, it's the perfect choice. I would probably go with the R9 just because it's a newer platform, a little bit more well-developed, well-rounded, has a little bit more of the creature comfort features. I think this thing makes a better street bike and general use sport bike than a Gixxer 750. So that's where I sit on that. All right, a motorcycle that you may not exactly think of as a direct competitor to the R9 is the Aprilia RS 660 factory. Now, it's down on power, it's down on displacement, down one whole cylinder even, but after riding the RS 660 factory recently, that thing punches way above its class. I mean, this thing is just phenomenal. It's splitting the difference between something like an R7 and an R9 and doing so in a way that's just super effervescent and interesting to ride. The RS 660 factory costs $13,999. You can find better deals. If you go one generation prior and you don't want to go factory, you can usually get these for a little over 11 grand or something like that. But I believe Aprilia now only sells the RS 660 in this kind of new factory trim. The TFT dash has been upgraded. It's dropped a little bit of weight. It's increased the power a little bit. So we're working with a 660cc parallel twin, making 105 horsepower and 49 foot-pounds of torque. This thing spiritually to me is more like the Panigale V2 rather than the R9. It's ultra lightweight, ultra Italian, very exotic, and very peppy and fun to ride. I'll put it to you this way, if you want a motorcycle that you can use every last ounce of it semi-responsibly on the street, the RS 660 is your ticket. I recently rode this bike and it felt like if I wanted to be a little crazy, I could use about 80% of it on road, which was really a ton of fun. And you know that you're gonna take it out on track and have an even better time with it. So we talked about the ZX-6 and the Gixxer 750 not exactly having the same technology suite as the R9, but the Aprilia is no slouch in this department. So this bike's got all the latest and greatest tech and safety features, 6-axis IMU, cornering ABS, nice big beautiful screen that you can look at while you ride, access all the different controls and modes. And that's the thing, when I talk about TFT displays to you guys, it's not that I'm just looking to slap on a 9-inch iPad on the top of my bike and pretend like I'm a 3-year-old in a long haul flight. What I want is the quick and easy accessibility to access all of those features. I don't like motorcycles that have a lot of extra features, you know, different slide controls, wheelie controls, all that cool stuff. But then it's a nightmare accessing them with a crappy joystick or a tiny screen. If you're gonna give me a lot of features, you gotta let me access them in a nice and easy way. That's the only reason I mention TFT displays so much. So the RS 660 also comes with a quick shift up and down, really nice exhaust note, and I don't know, it's kind of hard to pick between the R9 and the RS 660. I think if you were to put a gun to my head, I would probably pick the RS 660. I just think it's a little bit more fun and interesting to ride, but the R9 certainly is much faster. So if you're looking for out and out performance, you want that just wallop of torque down low. I mean, the CP3 motor is definitely more potent than the 660. All right, next up, it's from Honda. And this motorcycle is kind of strange because we have one version here in North America, but it recently got updated in Europe. So if I don't get all these specs correct, I am sorry for the Europeans. Your bike is a very different spec than what we get here in America. Of course, I'm talking about the CBR 600RR. Honda still makes this motorcycle. It was discontinued for a while, then it came back, then it got updated in Europe, then it's still here in America, but we don't get the updated version. So this is gonna be kind of a Honda reaming. So if you're a Honda fanboy, you may wanna skip this part that I'm about to get into. So $12,199 for the base, $13,199 for the ABS. It is a 599cc inline 4 motor. Real sweetheart of an engine, undertail exhaust. This thing's pretty cool, making 119 quoted horsepower and 46 foot-pounds of torque. So you can kind of think of this as, you know, the R6s of days past. A lot of top-end power, not a lot of torque, very small motor, and that's why we were saying that the ZX-6 and the GSX-R750 kind of punch more in this new generation super sport category. This is a very much last generation proposition. Particularly here in North America, this model is very old school. It doesn't have any of the new creature comforts that the one in Europe has. I know that one received a ton of updates, which is kind of surprising. We don't really know which way the tides are gonna go. We, you know, one year say that super sports are dead. The next year we say, just kidding, they're all gonna come back. Who the hell knows? So in Europe, you get a 6-axis IMU, you get wheelie control, engine brake control, riding modes, a TFT, and a quick shifter accessory. But here in North America, you're not gonna get any of that stuff. This is as it's sold from like the early 2010s. This model is very much old school. And for the price and for the size of the engine, for the power, the performance, the lack of tech, the lack of Brembo style Lemma brakes, I mean, it's pretty obvious the R9 would be your best bet here. It's gonna be very similarly priced. If you bought a brand new CBR 600RR in North America, leave me a comment down below. I'd love to hear from you. Okay, next up is a oddball competitor, but stick with me here. You may have never even seen one of these motorcycles before, but we have a dealer here in Austin, and that is the MV Agusta F3 800. So this bike came out a while back as an upgrade to the F3 675. So we're talking a 3-cylinder motor, 799cc. In the F3 R and RR trim, it makes 147 horsepower. In the Competizione trim, it makes 160 ponies. But you're already probably saying, yeah, it's 160 incredibly unreliable ponies. And I cannot disagree with you there. MVs are notoriously unreliable and just strange. I actually heard tell that one of them was just sitting at a dealer, it wasn't even being used, and just developed electronic problems all on its own. You know, one day it was working, the next day it just wasn't. So I think for that alone, you probably want to stick with the Yamaha in terms of a 3-cylinder sport bike offering. But let me tell you this, I got the chance to ride an F3 800 for a little bit. I rode it on track and street. If you want like real deal race bike 3-cylinder stuff, that's the ticket. There is no substitute. That's gonna be your best bet unless you wanna go back in the catalog and get a Daytona 675R from Triumph. It feels racy, it feels rigid, it feels just sublime. It is incredibly good. Comes equipped with a very nice Brembo MCS master cylinder, really nice sharp brakes, really beautiful handling. But again, it's an MV Agusta, and I personally would never own one of those bikes. Never, never, never. The other thing that's a bit tough to swallow is, of course, similar to the Ducati, but even worse, is this is an expensive proposition. So the F3R and RR is typically in the low $20,000 range from dealers, and the F3 Competizione is 33 grand. So you could buy 2 R9s and have money left over for the price of one F3 Competizione. It does have some newer tech features like a 6-axis IMU, some wheelie control, traction control, but it really is an out-and-out race bike because that's kind of the only thing MV does, other than make strange one-off limited edition gold-plated Brutale whatever that like a Saudi prince is gonna buy or some random YouTuber looking for clout. That's pretty much MV's entire market share at this point. So between the F3 800 and the R9, if I had a couple extra zeros in my bank account and I didn't really care about anything, maybe I'd go for the MV. If I wanted a true race bike, I'd go for the MV. But I think 99.99% of buyers are obviously gonna stick with something like the R9. All right, as promised, best for last. We made a whole video about it, so go and check that out. But it's the Ducati Panigale V2 and V2S. I absolutely adored this motorcycle. It really blew me away with its blend of power, performance, race pedigree, its abilities on track, and just its kind of really fun, peppy qualities. The only downside of this bike is it's expensive. That's really the only thing that kind of stinks about this bike. Everything else is incredible. It's lightweight, it's fun, it's great to ride, and as I mentioned in our detailed comparison between the two models, I would pick the Panigale V2S, but that's because I'm a bit of a Ducati simp, and everybody thinks I like Yamahas so much, but the Ducati really is just a really, really, really sweet bike. I think it's better out of the box for track days, for road use. It doesn't have a dead spot in second gear that you need to get a flash for and all this stuff. I just think it's a better executed motorcycle. So it's the one I would go with. And that wraps us up. The R9 versus all of its relevant competitors. I'm sure there's other stuff in the back catalog, older bikes that I didn't mention, but I wanted to talk about stuff that is sold brand new. What do you think? Drop me a comment down below. If you think I missed the mark on anything, leave me a comment and let me know your thoughts. And as always, this is the giveaway bike. Head over to yammydube.co. October 3rd is the last chance you have to get entered. Make sure you don't miss it. Thanks again for watching. I'll catch you in the next one. See you later.